to tell me just a little bit briefly about your kind of career in the video game industry before you got involved at Pixel Racers, what your background is development wise, role wise, and kind of all the pertinent background before we got to where you are today.
I started in the industry at THQ Montreal back in 2011. I just left France because I'm French. I come from France, and I just wanted to change my environment and change career. Basically, I used to work in advertisement, and I arrived in Montreal in 2011, and I kind of remember that it was a big hub for the video game industry. So I started at THQ Montreal. Then I went to a localization and QA testing lab called VMC. And at some point, one of my former comrades at THQ started working at Ubisoft Montreal, and he referred me. So they called me, and I was like, over the moon. I accepted, and so I went and worked for Ubisoft Montreal for a bit more than 5 years. First as a dev tester, and then I worked my way up. I kind of graduated as a game designer, and I ended up being, game designer at Ubisoft Montreal on a free-to-play PC project, and then on a VR project until I left to create Pixel Racers, my own studio.
When you started Pixel Racers, it came after a long, I would arguably say borderline kind of spiritual realization of kind of what you wanted to do with the rest of your life. Did you dive right into Vetrix, or did you have anything with the studio beforehand before you dove into Vetrix? Or kind of tell me about the early days at the studio.
Oh, the good old days, the good early days of the kitchen startup. No, I didn't start with Vetrix directly, actually. The first game I created with Pixel Racers and my ex-team is called SBK Team Manager, and it was the first motorcycle racing team management simulation game. The reason for this is that when I realized I had, as you said, that spiritual awakening, basically, and I wanted to leave Ubisoft, I needed to have a plan, and I had a chat with one of my close friends that asked me basically what would be your dream game to do. If you have to quit Ubisoft, might as well go for something that you really love doing. So I found investors, found some money, found a team. At some point, we were all working in my kitchen in my small apartment in Montreal, and it was a good time, definitely. And I found a publisher, and I managed to have the World Superbike Championship license through that publisher. So it was like perfect. Everything was great. But of course, first project was a bit overscoped. Relationship with the publishers was okay, but mistakes were made on both sides, my sides and their sides as well. And all in all, it made it like this game failed, basically, was a flop when it released. So that was the first adventure before Vetrix. It was a failure of the first project, even though it was really close to my heart, and we spent like 3 years working on it. But yeah, it doesn't always work.
How did you come up with the idea to develop in VR? Because it seems like a fairly high-end technology to develop in when you're living that minimalist lifestyle.
The idea of doing VR was kind of interesting because while I was doing that nomad life, I'm part of the Developers Guild of Quebec, which regroups a lot of video game studios, and they had this operation in a city called Roberval. Because the city of Roberval wanted to attract developers to their city. And so I went there and I chatted with a couple of developers that were doing VR, and they were like, the market is getting ready, it's starting to be comfortable for like small indie studios. They can make a good return on investment. And the thing is, I've worked in VR in 2015 at Ubisoft on an unannounced prototype project. It was basically research and development, but I already had the basics. I had good reflexes, and I knew what was needed to make a good VR product. So when I discussed with those guys, I came to the realization that if I can make a game by myself in VR, it might be profitable, and it might be my exit door to that kind of nomad, very minimalistic lifestyle. So I called my mom, basically, and I was like, Mom, I think I've got the next idea for Pixel Racers, but I'm broke. I'm living with $400 per month. I cannot afford a VR headset. Can you please send me the money and I buy one? And my mom's always very supportive, so she's like, yeah, sure, go for it. She sent me $500, and I bought my Oculus headset. And once I had the headset, the HMD, I needed to find the idea, right? And so the process of the idea of Vetrix was as well interesting, because since I was about to do that game by myself, and I'm not a programmer, I'm not an artist, I'm a game designer by trade, so I needed something very simple, and that's where the idea of Vetrix came to me.
Awesome. So, can you, I guess, very briefly tell me what a general kind of day in the life in creating Vetrix looks like? Because you were still on HelpX, you were still kind of doing the nomad minimalist approach. How do you find time in the midst of doing that to also develop a game in VR, something that you had never really attempted?
I needed something simple because I knew that my life wasn't very stable, and I didn't have a lot of time every day to develop the game. So I decided basically to go with the basics of the video game. I was like, okay, I need something simple, so let's go back like in 1980s, and find those kind of games that weren't very deep, but that were easy, kind of easy to develop. Maybe not in the days, but today with the tools we have, it's easier for us to develop these kind of games. So I was like, okay, back to basics. Let's go with Vetrix. It's very like, it was mirroring my life at the moment, because I was also back to basics in my life, living a very simple life, having not a lot of things, try to rebuild my life from scratch, starting again from the beginning, basically. And so that game that's at the beginning of the video game industry, kind of, from scratch on the Game Boy, 4 colors, very simple, very minimalistic. It was definitely a great mirror to my life. At some point, I was like seeing the end, and I was like, okay, it's gonna release, and the date was getting closer to my mother's birthday, which was great because she was at the start of this adventure. She offered me the HMD headset, the Oculus Rift, back in the days. And so I sent a message to Oculus. I'm like, guys, like, can we release on the 18th of February, because it's my mother's birthday and it's really important to me. And yeah, and the game released on that date, and it was wonderful, because it was like the culmination of all this hard work and the sheer grit, that it took to come back from that failure of SBK Team Manager to releasing something on my own, on my mom's birthday, that I was proud of. Vetrix, I love that game. It's a good product. It's polished. I made it with love, and yeah, it was great.
We've gone over everything. Everything's come full circle. From the beginning of going with the pinnacle of Ubisoft, figuring out you weren't happy, going along your spiritual journey, stripping everything away, making everything new, going into VR, which is brand new, being able to create Vetrix, being able to go that way with it. So I guess really to wrap things up, what's next for you? What's next for Emmanuel Floret?
What's next? So yeah, since the release of Vetrix, basically 1.5 years ago, I had a lot of light was shed onto pixel racers. So of course Vetrix 2 is in the works at the moment. And I'm working with my good friend Johan, who's my artist for the last several years, and we're trying to basically put on a proposal for publishers, investors, people that would be interested to come on the Vetrix 2 adventure with us. And so that's one project. And the other project that's very close to my heart is called Perspective, and it's a project I had the idea about of this software basically last year. It's a VR visualization, software that allows you to see things that are impossible to grasp without visualization.
Before we sign off, Emmanuel, is there anything that you want to say to the fans of Vetrix out there, the fans of Pixel Racers, the studio, family, your mom, anything like that before we sign off?
I'm gonna, do a big up to the family and all the people that supported me throughout those last 5 years, because Pixel Racer's birthday was last week, actually, day by day, the 5 years anniversary. So it's been quite a ride since I've left Ubisoft. Blood, sweat, tears, failures, successes, and that's the life of an entrepreneur. And I've been supported a lot by my family, my friends, and the fans, and I can't thank them enough for all the love I'm receiving. At the end of the day, I believe that this is why we make video games. It's not, for the props or for the money. It's just because we share and we receive love.
Beautiful, Emmanuel. Well, I could not have said it better myself. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Hopefully we'll have another one of these coming up for Vetrix 2, my friend.
I hope so, yes. Soon enough.